So how do you sell an inherited property in Georgia? Hey guys, I am Brad with probateresource.com. I'm actually an active real estate investor. I've been buying properties specifically in the probate inheritance niche for a number of years, but I've been an active investor now for almost 10 years. And I created probateresource.com a few years ago to help people through the probate process. We're actually headquartered in the state of Georgia. I live in the state of Georgia. So today we're going to talk about selling inherited houses in the state of Georgia and what do you need to know about that? Okay, so first of all, I am not an attorney, so please do not take what I say as legal advice. I would highly suggest that you consult with a probate attorney and or a real estate attorney for any legal related questions. And if you need a referral to a good attorney, we have a lot of great attorneys that we work with throughout the state of Georgia. I'd be happy to connect you with one of those people. But let's get into it, okay? Let's talk about selling an inherited house in Georgia. So if you inherited a house, right? Well, there's a lot of things to think about here. So first of all, we're going to go through some of the kind of legal type stuff, and then we're going to get into sort of the practical aspect of selling a house. So first of all, if you've inherited this house, who had title to the property? Was the property titled in your, let's say this was your dad's property, or maybe it was your mom and your dad's property. How did they hold title to that property? Was there one person on title? Was there multiple people on title? You're going to have to figure that out, okay? Because that's going to matter depending on how they held title. For instance, if they held title as what's called tenants in common, which is not specifically going to say that on the deed, but if they're tenants in common and one person died and the other was surviving, you're going to have to probate the estate of the person who has deceased, because the surviving person still only retains 50% ownership of the property if there were two people, for instance, a mother and a father, right? Now, if they held title as joint tenants with right to survivorship, then the surviving person, let's say there are two people on title, mom and dad were on title, dad dies, mom is left. Well, if they were joint tenants with rights to survivorship, and it's going to explicitly say that on the deed, you're going to have to pull the deed. And if the deed says that they are joint tenants with rights to survivorship or joint tenants with survivorship, it's going to say that explicitly. Then the mom, the mother, would actually get 100% ownership of the property, and then she can sell the property without having to go through probate. But if it doesn't explicitly say joint tenants with survivorship, then it is likely tenants in common, in which case mom has 50% ownership and dad's estate has 50% ownership. So you are going to need to probate dad's estate in order to sell the property. Now, if the property was held in a trust, then likely you can avoid all the probate stuff, and the trustee of the trust can sign this, or the beneficiaries. There may be a backup trustee appointed, that sort of thing. But honestly, I've been doing this now 10 years. I have bought two properties ever, just two from a trust. If you are watching this and you are thinking about doing estate planning, I would highly suggest you talk to your estate planning attorney about setting up a trust, entitling your properties in a trust and doing it properly, because then you can avoid probate altogether if it's done correctly. Okay, enough about trust. Let's talk about that. So we talked about the two title holders, or maybe there was one title holder. Either way, their estate is going to have to be probated in order for you, let's say you're the executor or the administrator, the person in charge of the estate. In order for you to legally get the legal authority appointed by the probate courts of Georgia in order to sell the real property that belonged to the estate, you're going to have to go through probate. If there was a will, you're going to have to probate the will. And during the will probate process, they're going to determine whether that will was valid or not. Sometimes wills are not valid. In the state of Georgia, I've got other videos about this in regards to what is a holographic will. That's basically a handwritten will. But a will needs certain things in order to be considered valid. So the probate court is going to have to validate that will. If they determine that the will is valid, then you're going to have to, you as the executor, when there's a will, you're named executor. You as the executor would be granted power generally to sell the real estate. The will's also going to outline whether you need to do an inventory of assets, whether you need to put notice, all those things. The will is going to say all of those things. And once the will is determined valid, the estate will be distributed according to what the will says. Now, someone can contest the will. We have seen that happen. And that can get into a very messy, sticky situation. So hopefully you don't have to deal with contesting the will. But let's just ignore that. We're not going to get into that conversation today. But if the will is deemed valid, then the estate is distributed according to whatever the will says. So-and-so gets X, so-and-so gets X, or whatever it says. And then the executor is the person in charge of the estate who will sell the property, and they will sign on behalf of the estate on the deed in order to sell that property. Now, if there was not a will, that's called intestate in the state of Georgia. In many cases, in many states, it's also called intestate. That means there was no will in place. And then you revert to the Georgia laws of intestate succession, which I'm not going to get into. There's different degrees of that. I'll tell you the first degree of intestate succession, and I'm not going to go into the further degrees of that. But the first degree is surviving spouse and children they're in the first degree of succession. So again, I won't get into that any further. You can look up the Georgia laws of intestate succession, but that's kind of like the default rules that have to be followed for an estate. And in an intestate succession, or an intestate situation, I should say, an administrator is going to be appointed to represent the estate. Basically, they're kind of the same thing as an executor. An executor kind of names that person in the will, but when there's no will, there's an administrator appointed. And someone can volunteer to be administrator, or we have seen in some cases where families are fighting and they can't agree, and the court will actually appoint an administrator. You really want to try to avoid that if at all possible. If you guys are fighting, you really need to try to come to some sort of agreement. Sometimes you can't, and the court's going to have to do that for you, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to do that, and a lot of pain and a lot of time. So if you can work out your differences and figure out a plan for the estate, that is the best solution, in my opinion. I have seen families waste tens of thousands of dollars fighting each other in court over, just craziness. So anyways, intestate means you appoint an administrator. Once you go through the probate process, you're going to petition to be the administrator. They're going to send notices out to all the heirs, that sort of thing. Pretty standard procedure going through the probate process. Ultimately, once you receive your letters of administration or your letters testamentary, letters of administration are for an administrator. Letters testamentary are when there's a will and you're an executor. Those letters, once they are issued, in most cases, should give you the power to sell real property. So once you have those letters in your hand, you can physically sell the real property. You can walk into the closing attorneys, or in Georgia, we use closing attorneys here in the state of Georgia. You can walk into the closing attorney's office, and the day you have those papers, you can walk in and you can sell that property. You can deed that property to someone else. But until you have those papers in your hand, you cannot sell that property. No one has the authority to sell anything on behalf of the estate before those papers are issued. But once you have them, you can sell it. Okay, so that's kind of the legal aspect. We start that process all the time with people before that ever happens. We'll get the ball rolling ahead of time. We'll go ahead and execute a contract. It's more of a goodwill handshake agreement that says, okay, you're going to sell the property to me once you have your letters in hand. We've had many cases where literally the seller or the representative of the estate gets their letters that morning, and that afternoon they're in the attorney's office and they're signing the papers and deeding the property over. And we kind of started the ball rolling before that point and got the title search done and got everything rolling so that the closing could happen very quickly. But I'm going to restate this again. You cannot close and you cannot sell any real property or any really assets of the estate until you have those letters of administration or your letters testamentary. In the state of Georgia, you have to have that. We don't have affidavits of heirship here in Georgia. We don't have small estate affidavits, that sort of thing. We just don't. I wish we did, but we don't. There are some exceptions to probate if it's been a certain amount of time since the person passed. There are some kind of ways around probate, but it's very, very limited circumstances, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. I do have other videos about that on my channel. Okay, so you're selling a property, you got your letters, now you're going to sell. So now how do you sell it? What's the best way to sell the property? Well, it's really going to come down to, you know, what is your time worth? What are the wishes of the family? You know, everybody wants more money, but the reality is a lot of times we see with families that have inherited a property, it's kind of a burden because they have their own busy lives, and for them to have to then deal with this property and get it ready to sell and list it with an agent. A lot of times these families just don't want to do that, and they just want to sell it quick, and they want a quick and easy process, and they're okay taking a little bit less for the property than they might get if they listed it on the market. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a real estate agent. I'm licensed in the state of Georgia. I hang my license with one source out of Woodstock, and I'm an active investor. I'm primarily an investor, but I've had my real estate license for a number of years. And I will tell you, the best way to make the most amount of money for your property is to fix the property up, get it ready, get it nice, looking for sale. In 2025, the market's different than it was a few years ago. Buyers are expecting a turnkey product. They're not wanting to do all the crazy projects and that sort of thing. That's just not, a few years ago they were in this market. In 2025, that's not the case anymore. So you do the things, get the house ready to sell, get it cleaned up, get it cleaned out, get all the stuff out of the house, make sure it's empty, that sort of thing. And then you're going to list the property on the market with a good real estate agent, not just any real estate agent, not your cousin Steve's sister's former roommate that got a real estate license a week ago. You know, don't let her learn on your property. Find a good real estate agent. I'm a real estate agent myself. Be happy to talk to you about listing the property if you want to go that route. I also have a lot of great real estate agents all over Georgia that I work with that I can refer you to, and they'll list it for you. That's the way to get the most amount of money for the property. But you got to get it ready for sale. You're going to have to, you know, put some money into repairs and painting and carpet and and all the things, right? To get it ready to sell. A lot of times families don't want to do all that. And you absolutely can sell a house as is. We buy houses as is all the time as an investor. We'll buy them with all the stuff in it. In fact, 9 out of every 10 probate deals that we do, we're buying a house with a lot of stuff in it. The family has gone in and they've taken the things out of the house that they want to keep, and the rest of it they're just leaving behind. They don't want to mess with it. They see it as a burden to have to spend time and days and get dumpsters and clean the place out and get charities to come over and take clothes and They just don't want to mess with any of that. So they sell it to us as is, and we buy houses as is all the time. They don't want to make any repairs. We make them a fair cash offer up front, and we buy the house for cash, and we make it easy. We close in as little as 2 weeks. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, we can't close until you have your probate letters, so you got to make sure you have those. If you haven't even filed for probate yet, we'd be happy to connect you with an attorney. You can do it yourself. We would advise you to use an attorney to do it, and I have great attorneys that I can refer you to. But again, you can do it yourself, and there are also ways to alleviate the cost of probate. We've paid for people's probate up front under the understanding that they would sell us the property when they're done, kind of advance them the money, and then we get paid off. We get the money paid back at closing. We've done that many, many times. I can have that discussion with you. But okay, we talked about listing it. Remember, getting the most amount of money for the property, you're going to list it. If you just want it fast, done, quick, and easy, selling to an investor is the right route. That's the way. But I've got to make a profit on the deal, right? I'm not a charity. I have to make a profit to keep the doors open in my business and keep my employees employed. So I'm going to have to make a profit on that. So you're probably not going to get as much from me as you would listing it on the market, but I make it fast and easy. We're speed and convenience is what we're all about. Quick and easy. So if you want to go that route and talk to us about that, we'd be happy to have that discussion. So how do you do that? Okay. You can go to probateresource.com, or you can go to Arborview Properties is my local Georgia company. We have arborviewhomebuyers.com. You can go to either one of those websites. There's a link below here in the description. It'll take you to our website. You can fill out the form there on our website, submit your information. Someone from our team will turn around and call you ASAP, have a few more questions for you just to kind of gauge what's going on. And then we can schedule a time to come out and see the house and make you an offer. We do not make offers over the phone. There are other investors out there who will make you an offer over the phone. And what I have to say about that is 9 times out of 10, that is not a real offer. If someone has not seen your house in person, they cannot make you an accurate offer on that property over the phone. They're going to miss things, and I can almost guarantee you that they're going to come back later and they're going to lower that offer because they didn't see certain things weren't disclosed to them, whatever. So if you're getting an offer over the phone from someone, that is not a real offer. Do not take that as a real offer. Or if you go online, you go to like OfferPad or Open Door and you get the little internet offer online, 9 times out of 10, that number you get online is not the final number you're going to get for the property. They're going to come out and inspect the property. They're going to look at it and they are going to lower the price accordingly. And there are a lot of investors out on the market who make what I call bait and switch offers. They're going to lock you. They want to get you under contract over the phone ASAP. Because for some reason in our world, investors like to brag about the number of properties they have under contract, but they don't brag about the number of properties they've actually closed. And I know a lot of people who operate very large businesses and they put a lot of properties under contract, but they cancel a lot of contracts. A lot of them are canceling upwards of 30, 40, 50% of their contracts are getting canceled and they don't actually ever close. And what does that mean for you as a seller? Well, they're wasting your time. They're locking you up under contract for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it is, and then they're backing out. And now you're back to the drawing board again, and you've got to find another backup offer, and you got to go back under contract all over again, and you got to go through the whole process all over again. So we at Probate Resource and Arborview Properties, we make you an offer up front that we're going to fulfill. I don't play that game. It might not be the highest offer you get, but I can tell you that offer is going to be what I'm going to buy the property for. That's just how I operate. Now, we do have a due diligence period in our contracts, and I ask for a few days of due diligence. Some of these guys will ask for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of due diligence. I'm typically 5 to 7 days is what I ask for on my due diligence period, just to double check everything, make sure everything is cool. And I can tell you, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've bought hundreds of houses. I can count on one hand the number of times I have had to renegotiate a price on a property after we put it under contract. One hand in hundreds of deals, I can count on one hand the number of times we've had to do that in 10 years. So that I try, if at all possible, to do what I say I'm going to do. And if I give you a number, that's what I'm buying your property for. So anyways, guys, again, go to our website, click on the link below. It'll take you to our website. Appreciate you watching this video. I know it was a long one. This is kind of a complicated subject. But thanks again, guys. I'm Brad with probateresource.com. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.